I want to introduce you now to a man who probably needs very little by way of introduction, Paul Griffiths from Dubai Airports. Paul's going to come up and join me here on the stage for what is now turning to be into being our annual check-in. So Paul, come up and join me and take a seat. Nice to see you. Nice to see you again. We have to stop meeting like this. And I want to sort of pick up on some of the themes that we started there with Vivian, because again, capacity for you is growing every year. Every time I meet you, there are new numbers. Just bring us up to date on where you are now.
Well, we're at 95.3 million by the end of the year, which for 11 years now has made us the largest international airport in the world. And we're not stopping. I think within about 18 months, we're likely to top the 100 million international passengers. And I think, the safety valves are going to start to sort of blow off a bit, because by 2031, the actual expected throughput through DXB is going to be something like 114 million. Right. And remember, we've grown 22% in the last 10 years without a single piece of major infrastructure. So there's a bit of a shift in how we're developing capacity now and how we're able to accommodate that number of customers through the airports, which is actually quite a small footprint, much smaller than the footprint of Hong Kong, actually.
Yes, you say no new infrastructure, but of course there's DWC down the road, and we'll come on to that in a second, because there's so much effort, and every time we meet, that creeps closer, doesn't it, that deadline? When you're operating at that sort of scale, what's the hardest bit for you to get right in that, constrained space?
Well, we think the hardest thing is not just accommodating the volume, but actually providing the level of service quality. And of course, as you get busier and busier, that becomes exponentially harder. So I think in order to be not just the busiest and the best, but the greatest airport, you've got to have the combination of those things working. And I think what I call it is trying to provide intimacy at scale, because if you think about it, every single guest that we welcome through the doors of our airport, they're on an individual journey. It means something special to them. And we talk about hundreds of millions of customers, but actually what we've got to try and do is the shifting demographic, particularly since COVID, really, really interesting. And you have to be very fleet of foot to adapt your product and service around a changing demographic, and trying to train our people and provide systems and technology that makes us a fairly frictionless airport. That's, I think, the key to it. That unlocks the capacity and provides the higher level of service.
Yeah, and Vivian there talking about it being a wholesome, holistic experience for passengers. It's no longer just good enough to get them from A to B quite quickly, although that's clearly the main aim. I looked on the website, talking about Dubai being a premier global hub. What does that mean in reality? Because there's a lot of competition.
Absolutely right, and I think something like 84% of customers who choose DXB could actually go through a different hub if they wanted to. So our challenge is to try and provide a level of service on the ground that matches what the airlines provide in the air. And what we're trying to do is make that experience very quick, very seamless, and we are investing in a lot of new tech to bring that to life. I mean, things like taking the biometric signature right at the beginning of the journey and using that single signature to cover all of the processes, check-in, baggage, immigration, security. And we're trying to reinvent some of those, frankly, quite archaic processes that we've inflicted on customers for far too long.
And we've been on a stage like this for a number of years talking about that becoming reality. It's now here. I think you're calling it the red carpet service as well.
We're calling it the red carpet. I prefer the flying carpet or the magic carpet. I need the branding department to be a bit more adventurous with this,
but it's
really.
Dubai, of course it's a red carpet.
Exactly. Everything's a red carpet, That's the problem.
Just sort of give us a sense of what that looks like right now. And, of course, this is about bringing passengers along, and pardon the pun, on the journey with you as well. But making sure that if it's available, it works. Because there's nothing worse than trying to roll it out and there's a problem with it. How far along are we?
We're pretty far along. The technology is very well proven now, and our strike rate on getting the right biometric signature is very close to 100% now.
Okay.
And this is because the camera technology has moved on, and we've got these long lenses with a very deep depth of field. So as you walk up, you can be literally, 10 meters away, and the biometrics will capture your face and be able to identify who you are. Now, the idea is actually to go from red magic or flying carpet to no carpet.
Yeah.
So the cameras are actually just embedded in the infrastructure where you don't even see them. The idea is quite simple. I mean, I could ask for a show of hands here. Who would like to spend more time at an airport? And we've probably got some aviation geeks that will put their hands up. Yeah, there you go. But the thing is, you see, I think this is about respect of the time of our customers.
Cool.
And what I'd rather have is a situation where, in the aviation industry, when people turn up to fly, they've paid their money, they've selected their seat, they know where they're going. So why do we ask them again at check-in? So we can get rid of that. Now, if baggage companies who are manufacturing luggage could pre-print a unique identifier on every item, so when we introduce it into a baggage system, it can be immediately associated with the customer. Why in the 21st century are we still sticking bits of paper? I mean, I look in the States in particular, where self-service machines, you've got infrequent travelers, usually of the silver travel variety like myself, who are trying to work out how to stick part A onto part B and take away the bit you had in your hand the first time, and then peel the backing paper off and then leave it on the ground because there's no bin. I mean, it's just prehistoric. Yeah. So how do we deal with luggage in a very civil way, possibly even before people get to the airport? Then, if we can do that and capture the biometric signature, when you get to the airport, you're a known quantity, we can make both the security and immigration process completely seamless and almost invisible. That way, you get people through really quickly. They'll be in a better frame of mind to engage with our commercial opportunities of, lounges, bars, restaurants, etc. But most important of all, if you can halve the time it takes for people to get through the airport process, you can actually double the capacity in the same infrastructure. Yeah. That's how we've accommodated that, 10, 20 million growth in the last 10 years with no new buildings. So it has a huge benefit if you actually apply current technology and reinvent. I mean, look at what the Chinese are doing to the car market. And they didn't start incrementally by buying up a car company or by putting four wheels on a box. They started with the technology and redesigned the entire product around it. That's what we've got to do in the airport industry, in my view.
And one of the things we hear all the time is about passengers' willingness to share that data. And, and we've had this discussion as well, because actually this is just a binary thing. It's a yes or a no. You don't need to know their entire life story to let them through that border point.
No, we just need a token, which is red or green. Are they good to go, or do they need to step aside and have a word?
And what are passengers telling you then, that when that process works, are they happy to hand over that information or some information, provided they see a benefit for it?
I think, look, we're living in the 21st century now. It's so difficult to opt out of these automated processes now. And quite honestly, provided we are reassuring people that we're not misusing the data, and there's a massive benefit to having that data, which is faster passenger processing, better experience, a much more pleasant airport experience, then surely this is a bit of a non-issue. When we go into a cafe to pay for a coffee and bring our phones out, do we worry that Starbucks are going to misuse your data when you tap to pay for your latte? I mean, I think we've got beyond that now. Yeah. And it's really, really difficult to opt out of new tech now.
One of the challenges with this, and you talk about people struggling with bag labels or whatever, or self-check-in, I mean, that at one time was a new initiative, wasn't it? And, we've got to bring people on this journey with us. The difficulty is the very different experience that people might have at their departure airport versus their arrival airport. How do we start embedding some of these things into being a core offering rather than a nice to have? That I know I can come through Dubai and it's going to be seamless, but I'm going to get to my destination and the paperwork needs to be there and the printouts and the barcodes and all that sort of thing.
We need a global standard. When we stopped people having to scrub their fingers at the end of the day to get the red carbon out when they were handling physical tickets, the industry moved in step and got rid of tickets because the industry adopted very, very quickly, ticketless travel. Now, we really need to do the same with the way that we cover all of the other requirements of travel, whether it be immigration or security. To be able to digitize that entire experience and take away everything, we've all got to move in lockstep on that. And I think we're probably fairly close. I mean, if you travel in the US now through a gateway, you have this biometric capture at the point of origin, and even if you're traveling internationally, you don't actually have to show your passport or go through security again. So the technology exists, it's being adopted, and I think as it gets more popular regionally, it will then actually be able to be rolled out, and we'll have a seamless experience across the whole travel journey, irrespective of where you're traveling to or from.
How far away do you think we are from that, realistically?
The thing is, you see, these things happen very, very quickly once that head of steam is really built up. And I think now biometrics are so well established in so many walks of life, I don't think we're that far away. 2-3 years, I think everyone will be copying our lead, and we'll be able to provide that experience out and back. I mean, obviously, I can only speak for DXB, and we are particularly on this and really pushing for it.
Yeah.
Other airports perhaps aren't pushing quite so hard, but whenever I travel, I do see changes happening. We've just got to get them at the same pace and at the same volume.
And so much of what you do at DXB will inform what you do at DWC, right?
Completely, yeah.
Talk to me about the sort of those conversations and discussions that you have about making a bet, for want of a better word right now, on what that technology will look like when you can put it into DWC.
Well, it needs a different approach. I think the problem before has been airports have been designed as buildings into which we put systems.
Yeah.
Now we're a bit more enlightened and we design the systems and the buildings together. What we've got to get to is imagine what the process and systems and the passenger experience will look like and create a building to encompass them, because we're living in a great age where technology can solve pretty much everything. We've just got to look at it from the other end of the lens. What's it going to be like? What's the experience going to be like? And then how we actually enable the technology to make that process happen. And I think, we're very fortunate. DWC Phase 2, when it opens in 2032, will have all of the new technology that we're testing and trialing and putting into passenger service now, and it will be adopted at scale. It's great having the world's largest airport opening in 2032, particularly when you're using the current largest airport in the world as your test bed for innovation and technology. Yeah. We absolutely need it. We'll be at 124 million by 2032. It can't be a day late. We're absolutely relying on that, and it will have all of the latest process technology. An airport is a way of translating from a ground-based means of transport to an airborne one, and we've got to really work on making that as effective and efficient as we can.
You've been chief executive at DXB, 15 years-ish?
18.
18. And many other places before that. And I asked Vivian this question about your skill set. As a leader in an airport, how has that changed? And particularly around things like technology. Because, as a boss, as a manager, you're looking after a huge team of people. Those requirements, those skills, the way you maybe manage those skills has changed. Have you evolved your style?
Well, it's really interesting. When you talk to an airport manager and ask them what business they're in, I think everyone gives you a different answer. Yeah. And I think the thing is, people think of us mostly as managing infrastructure. I don't think that we are. I think we're very squarely in the customer service business. Right. My major role is, I think, hospitality, making absolutely sure that every single customer who pays my wages and the wages of all my staff is happy enough to come back for more, and that's the most important thing. And I think the skills do change, but we've got 100,000 people working across DXB, but a very tiny proportion directly work for Dubai Airports. Yeah. So it's a question of building the right relationships and strategic partnerships to be able to deliver all of those skills necessary. I was very fortunate. I started my life in science and tech and being in software development. So I sort of have perhaps a bit of a jump start on others in understanding exactly what the fundamentals of technology are. But I think the thing is, you need to work with good partners, and I don't think you need to work with other airports. You need to work with industries that have adopted things and changed the world, and none of those have been incremental. They've been massively disruptive, and I look forward to creating as much disruption in the aviation industry, but not for our customers.
And when you say look forward to what comes next, and I wonder, big picture, would you love to be remembered for being the man who oversaw Dubai DXB's expansion to be the world's biggest airport, or the world's best? What's
well,
most
I think
important?
the thing is, the way I'd answer that is that I think if you put the biggest and the best together, you get the world's greatest airport. I'd like to be the boss of the world's greatest airport, but not just once, but twice.
On that note, Paul, we'll leave it. I know you're going to stay around for our panel session, but always good to talk to you. Thanks so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Griffiths, thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thank you.